Imagine hiring like a brilliant new coder, right? You hand them a corporate credit card, you give them unrestricted access to your production database, and you just walk away.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Right. You don't check their work, you don't monitor their hours, you just completely trust that they'll figure it out. And I mean, that sounds terrifying.
Sounds like a fast track to a catastrophic system failure
Oh,
or, bankruptcy.
exactly. But if you actually look at the sheer volume of enterprise technology updates that dropped this week, that is essentially the reality we're rapidly building towards. So welcome back to the deep dive.
Thanks. Got to be here.
We're constantly pulling from just this massive stack of sources to figure out where tech is heading. And today our mission is to cut through all the noise and extract the critical insights from Andy Kagan's weekly newsletter.
And it is a packed newsletter this week.
Oh, it really is. We've got a stack of technical updates, blogs, transcripts spanning 8 core areas. We're talking Azure, Microsoft 365, Power Platform, DevOps, data and AI, security certifications, and industry trends.
Right. And if you sift through all those seemingly disparate updates, a very clear, very stark narrative emerges.
Yeah.
The era of treating AI as just a conversational engine. Like a highly advanced search bar that just answers your questions. It's officially over. We are moving from chatbots to autonomous agentic systems. We're basically building digital coworkers.
I really want to dig right into how this is actually materializing because the shift here is massive. Let's look at Microsoft 365 Copilot Cowork, which just hit general availability.
Yes, finally.
The adoption metrics are just staggering. I mean, more than half of the Fortune 500 adopted this during the preview phase alone. But the real story isn't the adoption rate, right? It's the mechanism. It's not just summarizing emails anymore.
Not at all.
It's actually coordinating long-running, multi-step workflows across completely different applications.
And you have to think about the computational weight of that.
Sure.
If an AI is just answering a single question, it's a discrete transaction. But if it's coordinating a workflow,
Like what?
like, say, monitoring an inbox, pulling financial data from an attachment, cross-referencing it with a CRM, and then generating a forecast,
Right,
that requires sustained reasoning over a period of time.
right.
And that fundamental change in how the AI operates has forced a massive change in how it's actually built.
Yeah, because Copilot Cowork is introducing usage-based billing now, right, on
Yeah.
top of the standard licensing, and they're not just locking you into one monolithic brain anymore, which I think is fascinating.
Exactly.
You actually have a choice of which models to use for which tasks. So you get Anthropic's Opus 4.8, Sonnet 4.6, OpenAI's GPT 5.5, and this is interesting, an upcoming Microsoft model called Cowork 1.
Which is going to be highly cost-effective, and that's an absolute necessity for enterprise scale. I mean, when AI starts doing autonomous work in the background, you cannot afford to use a massive, incredibly expensive frontier model just to do, basic data entry.
Right, you'd blow through your budget in a day.
Exactly. You need those cost-effective models for the busy work, and then you reserve the heavy lifting models for the complex reasoning.
And we're seeing this intelligence scaling happen dynamically, too, with Planner Agent. That also just hit GA.
Oh, the Planner Agent update is huge.
Yeah, it actually scales its reasoning based on the difficulty of the task you give it. So if you ask it to do something simple, it just uses lightweight processing. It only spins up the deep reasoning when the request actually demands it. It's literally rationing its own brain power.
It's so efficient.
Mm.
And we're seeing these capabilities democratized incredibly fast, especially in education. Copilot notebooks and study guides are rolling out right now to students 13 and older on those standard A1, A3, and A5 educational licenses.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and it can take scattered, disorganized PDFs and slide decks and autonomously synthesize them into an interactive study companion. It's orchestrating the information, not just, retrieving it.
But to orchestrate information effectively, the AI actually needs to be able to push the buttons. And that's what blew my mind about the massive under-the-hood refresh for Power Platform Copilot Studio.
Oh, it's a completely different system now.
Right, because if you've built chatbots before, you're used to concepts like topics and child flows, basically these rigid decision trees.
Yeah, and those are completely gone.
Gone, replaced by workflows and skills, and more importantly, model-driven apps now have an agent mode.
And this is the profound architectural shift.
Hmm.
In the past, if you integrated AI into an app, it sat in a side panel.
Right, like a chat window.
Exactly. You could ask it a question about the data on your screen, and it would give you an answer, but you still had to physically click the buttons to do the work. With agent mode, the AI can actually interact with the user interface natively. It navigates the application and triggers actions on your behalf.
I was thinking about this, and it really shifts how we view these systems. We used to treat AI like this brilliant but very literal intern who needed constant supervision.
Yeah, a paralyzed intern sitting over your shoulder telling you what to do.
Exactly. But now, with Copilot Cowork and these new agentic IDEs, it's like hiring a specialized contractor. You give them the budget, the tools, a goal, and they just go do it. They have their hands on the keyboard.
Precisely. And when you look at the broader industry trends with coding tools, things like Atoms, Devon, Windsurf, or cursor the boundary between an autonomous engineer delegating tasks and an agentic development environment is just completely dissolving.
Wait, hold on. Let me stop you right there because this is where the reality of this transition gets really messy to me.
Okay, lay it on.
If an autonomous agent is writing the code, right,
Mm-hmm.
and it's executing logic based on a high-level goal, the human developer didn't actually write that underlying infrastructure.
No, they didn't.
So doesn't that make debugging an absolute nightmare? I mean, if production goes down at 3 a.m. and the system is just this black box of AI-generated logic, how on earth do you fix it?
You've just hit on the exact existential crisis facing DevOps and site reliability engineering right now.
Glad I'm not the only one panicking.
No, it's a massive issue. And the industry's answer to this is a complete paradigm shift called spec-driven development, or SDD.
Okay, break that down for me. How does a spec solve the black box problem?
Well, right now, we operate in a prompt-first workflow. A developer asks an AI for code, the AI spits it out, the human pastes it in. It's super fragile. With spec-driven development, we move to a spec-first approach for AI-native engineering. You don't write the code, you write a rigorous, highly detailed, declarative specification of what the system must do.
Including how it behaves and what the failure states are.
Exactly. That spec becomes the verifiable contract.
So the specification is essentially the new source code. You aren't debugging the Python script, you're debugging the contract that generated it.
Spot on. You constrain the AI's output mathematically, and the development environments are rapidly evolving to enforce this. Like, we're seeing Aspire 13.4 arrive in VS Code, and it features TypeScript Aphos GA and these strict typed resource commands.
So it limits what the AI can actually do.
Right. The AI can't just hallucinate a server name anymore. The IDE forces it to strictly adhere to the typed resources available in the system architecture.
So it's building guardrails right into the foundation.
Yeah.
And we're even seeing the AI manage its own security flaws, right? GitHub Copilot Autofix is now in private preview for GitHub Advanced Security for Azure DevOps.
Yes, and that's a perfect example. It doesn't just scan your code and highlight a vulnerability for a human to fix. It autonomously rewrites the code to patch the vulnerability.
Which requires an incredibly high degree of contextual reasoning.
It does. And if you want to see where the bleeding edge of this autonomous reasoning is happening, you really have to look at Microsoft Foundry Labs.
This is where their research transitions into reality, right?
Yeah, it's where you can actually test these specific models. They have MAI Thinking 1, which focuses entirely on strong reasoning and mathematical logic, but at a fraction of the cost of the giant frontier models.
Oh, and they have Pharaoh 1.5, which is frankly astonishing.
It really is.
It's designed specifically for computer use. Like, it literally perceives the screen from screenshots and predicts where to move the mouse and what to click natively. The AI is visually parsing the interface exactly the way a human does.
Yeah, and they've also got Magentic Light in there too. But here is the structural bottleneck with all of this. You can have the smartest autonomous agents in the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you are managing their state, their memory, their workflows using traditional, fragile scripts, the system will eventually collapse under its own weight.
Yeah, the orchestration just gets too complicated.
Exactly. Which brings us to one of the most significant architectural updates in this entire stack, which is Azure Horizon DB.
Yes, this is currently in public preview, and it fundamentally changes where the AI brain actually sits.
It flips the whole model.
Because normally, if you build an AI app, you have an external application layer, maybe written in Python, that pulls data from your database, sends it to the AI, waits for a response, handles timeouts, and then writes it back. It's an orchestration nightmare.
It introduces immense latency and so many points of failure. Azure Horizon DB changes this by allowing developers to run AI pipelines natively inside SQL.
Inside the database?
Yes. They are using an open source extension called Puja Durable. And using that, a developer can describe incredibly complex, long-running workflows declaratively in SQL.
So things like parallel fan-out, where the system splits a task into 100 pieces, processes them simultaneously, maybe waits for a human in the loop to approve an anomaly, and then recombines the data. All of that runs as fault-tolerant functions inside the database.
Exactly. The database manages the state, the text chunks, the vector embeddings, the calls to the AI models. And if a process fails halfway through, the database natively handles the retries and rollbacks, just like it would a traditional financial transaction.
Yeah.
You completely eliminate that fragile middle-tier orchestration.
But, I mean, if you are suddenly running massive AI pipelines natively inside your database layer, the underlying infrastructure has to scale tremendously to handle that compute load, right? The physical pipes literally need to be bigger.
Which is exactly why we are seeing major updates at the very bottom of the infrastructure stack. The Azure updates from June 12, 2026 really highlight this. Take Azure Boost, for example.
Right.
They're adding RDMA, or Remote Direct Memory Access. When you have servers processing massive AI models, you cannot afford to have the CPU bogged down by just moving data across the network.
Yeah.
RDMA offloads the network and storage functions to dedicated hardware.
So servers can read from each other's memory directly without waking up the main processor.
Exactly. It slashes latency. We're also seeing Azure Managed Radius get Entra ID-based access control for the data plane, so no more shared keys. And PostgreSQL Flexible Server now gets maintenance control for up to 14 days of rescheduling.
The infrastructure is just becoming incredibly lean and customizable. And part of becoming lean means aggressively clearing out the legacy debt. Like, organizations can no longer create general-purpose V1 or legacy blob storage accounts in Azure.
Nope, those are done.
And they'll be fully retired by October 13th, 2026. If you're running old tech, you're basically being forced into the modern era.
And we are seeing that modernization happen at the analytics layer as well, specifically with data governance. In Power BI and Fabric, org apps with audiences is now generally available. And this solves a massive data sprawl problem.
Oh, I know this pain intimately. In the past, if you had a huge data set, you had to build a specific dashboard for the execs, a different one for sales, another for frontline managers. You duplicate the same app over and over just to control who saw what.
And every time the data model changed, you had to update every single duplicate.
Exactly.
Now you create one single app, but you tailor the navigation and the content visibility based on the audience viewing it.
It's like a massive commercial restaurant, right? The kitchen is cooking from the exact same massive inventory of ingredients. But the executive chef gets a menu showing food costs, the line cook gets a menu showing ticket times, and the customer just gets a beautifully curated menu with the dishes and prices. Everyone is interacting with the exact same kitchen, but their view is completely customized.
That's a perfect analogy. You consolidate the data foundation, but you hyper-personalize the delivery without duplicating the effort. And speaking of how information is synthesized and delivered, we have to look at how AI is fundamentally breaking traditional search.
Oh, Bing Webmaster Tools.
Yes, they're introducing new AI visibility insights.
This is an absolute earthquake for anyone who publishes content or relies on SEO. For decades, the game was just keyword matching.
Right.
But AI doesn't just match keywords. It synthesizes answers by reading multiple sources. And these new tools like Intents, Topics, Citation Share, and Compare, they actually let publishers see how their data is being cited inside of natively generated AI answers.
It's a whole new way of tracking visibility. You're seeing how the AI reasons about a topic and groups user queries rather than just tracking a rigid string of keywords.
But if we zoom out for a second, we are talking about building autonomous agents that can click around your UI. We're running AI pipelines natively in SQL databases. We're centralizing all of our analytics.
Yeah.
Consolidating all of that power and access creates a massive gleaming target for attackers. If an agent has the keys to the kingdom, what happens when it gets tricked?
And this is the darkest side of the autonomous transition. Security has to fundamentally change because the attack surface is no longer just like unpatched software. The attack surface is the AI's reasoning process itself.
Wow.
And the perfect case study for this is a vulnerability that was recently patched known as SearchLeak.
Walk me through exactly how SearchLeak worked, because the mechanics of this are just wild. It basically turned Microsoft 365 Copilot into a data exfiltration weapon.
Yeah, so imagine you ask your AI coworker to summarize a highly confidential internal strategy document. An attacker wants that document. So the attacker subtly poisons external data that the AI might reference, and they embed a hidden payload using HTML tags.
Okay.
Specifically, they use encoded payloads in the queue parameter. When the AI processes that payload, it's tricked into embedding the sensitive internal data into an external image URL.
So to the AI, it just thinks it's formatting a picture to show you. But the web address of that picture actually contains your corporate secrets tacked onto the end of it.
Exactly. So the moment the system tries to load the image, It reaches out to the attacker's server to fetch it and seamlessly leaks your confidential data in the URL request.
It just hands it over?
It bypasses traditional security perimeters entirely because the AI itself initiated the outbound request, which is a major warning for organizations to review their CSPLL lists.
Giving an AI agent access to your emails and files is literally like handing a brilliant but incredibly gullible employee the company credit card. They don't have malicious intent, but how do we ensure they aren't socially engineered into just handing away corporate secrets?
Well, defenders are getting new tools to reconstruct these complex chains of events. Security teams can now use a playbook leveraging telemetry across Microsoft Purview, Defender, and Sentinel.
So instead of just seeing that data left the building, you get a cohesive digital paper trail to investigate AI-related activity.
Exactly. You can trace unexpected data access, who initiated the prompt, what external data was ingested. You have to be able to audit the logic path.
Yeah.
And you also have to protect the human identities governing the AI.
Which brings us to Entra ID protection.
Right. They've rolled out enhancements that stop identity attacks in real time. If it detects a hybrid-based identity attack or high user risk, it doesn't just flag it. It completely blocks token issuance entirely.
It just cuts the cord.
Instantly.
But what about the software itself? If we are trusting these systems to run our infrastructure autonomously, how do we know the software builds they are running haven't been compromised at the factory?
That is where Microsoft Signing Transparency comes in, or MST. This is now generally available, and it's an open, tamper-evident ledger based on the SCITT standard.
SCITT. Supply chain integrity, transparency, and trust. Unpack that. What does a transparent supply chain actually mean for the software we run?
So think about a traditional supply chain attack. A hacker breaches a vendor, injects malicious code, and signs it with the vendor's stolen digital certificate. Your system thinks it's valid and installs the malware. MST changes that. Every critical software build, like Azure Attestation, is cryptographically logged on this public ledger.
So it operates almost like a blockchain for software updates.
Pretty much. It extends the zero-trust philosophy all the way into the build itself. If an attacker tries to slip a compromised update into the chain, your system checks the ledger. If the cryptographic receipt doesn't match the immutable record, the installation just fails.
That is incredibly elegant. But deploying new, sophisticated defenses like SCITT ledgers only works if organizations are actually fixing the vulnerabilities they already have, which brings us to learning, certifications, and policy. The rules of compliance are fundamentally changing.
Yes, they are.
And I have to ask, why did it take a federal directive to finally force organizations to prioritize the vulnerabilities that hackers are actually exploiting right now instead of just chasing high CVSS scores like a vanity metric?
It's a great question. And for context, we're talking about CISA Code 2604. The U.S. federal government issued a binding operational directive that essentially kills CVSS compliance theater.
Right. Because for years, it's been a 1 to 10 severity scale. A vendor announces a 9.9, executives panic and demand a fix.
But CVSS scores lack vital context. You could have a 9.9 on an isolated server in a basement with zero internet connectivity. The actual risk is minimal. Meanwhile, you have a 4.0 vulnerability on a public-facing firewall that hackers are actively exploiting.
Right. It's like walking into an ER and demanding doctors treat a patient with a severe flu strain before they treat the patient with an active gunshot wound. The flu might technically be a severe virus on paper, but the gunshot wound is the bleeding crisis.
Exactly. And that's what this directive changes. Federal agencies must now use SSVC, stakeholder-specific vulnerability categorization. It prioritizes patching based on actual exploitation, exposure, and impact rather than arbitrary severity scores.
And the reality check is desperately needed. If you look at the scary data from 2025, organizations fully remediated only 26% of the vulnerabilities listed in the KEV, the Known Exploited Vulnerabilities Catalog.
Only a quarter.
Only a quarter of the most dangerous, actively exploited flaws were fixed. We were so busy chasing theoretical 10 out of 10 bugs that the actual fires were burning the building down.
Which is why part of this new era of governance is ruthlessly cutting off outdated technology. For example, MDOP, the Microsoft Desktop Optimization Pack, is officially out of support.
So no more managing BitLocker and app virtualization on legacy systems.
Right. Organizations must move those workloads to Intune and Entra ID. We're also seeing the network perimeter harden. Windows DNS Server now generally supports DOH or DNS over HTTPS for encrypted name resolution.
Awesome.
And Amazon workspaces can now be managed with Microsoft's Entra ID and Intune.
We're even seeing analytics platforms locked down. Power BI has workspace outbound access protection in preview, so you can physically constrain where data inside a workspace is legally allowed to flow.
The guardrails are going up everywhere.
They really are. So let's step back and synthesize the sheer scope of what we've covered today. The technology landscape isn't just updating, it's fully integrating.
Yeah, that's the big takeaway.
We have autonomous AI agents that are writing code and executing workflows on their own. They're supported by massive SQL-based AI pipelines running natively in the database. And while that happens, security ledgers and federal policies are scrambling to keep the guardrails intact so it doesn't all derail.
It's an incredible shift.
It is arguably the most exciting time to be in enterprise technology, but it demands a completely different mindset, which leaves you, the listener, with a final provocative thought to mull over. We started this deep dive talking about the terror of handing a brilliant but unmonitored employee the keys to your database.
Right.
In the traditional engineering model, your job was to be the creator. But as AI models start acting as autonomous employees with their own budgets, and infrastructure becomes entirely self-healing, when does the human role shift entirely from creator to auditor?
It's the ultimate question.
Are you ready to manage a digital workforce where your primary job is just reviewing immutable SEITT ledgers and SSVC risk scores just to make sure your AI coworkers are actually doing what they're supposed to? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning how the pieces fit together, and we will catch you on the next one.